That was Slayer's Temptation, winning the Great Classic Albums category. So now basically what you're looking at is you're looking at Slayer in first place with 9 points, Metallica with 8 points in second, Megadeth in third place with 7 points, and Anthrax Anthrax in third place with 7 points, and Megadeth in last with 6 points. So
you can still eke it out, Dave.
Let's
you got two more categories.
See if that will stick or what kind of happens here. You know, we'll have to kind of see. So, so now we're on to. Oh no, I had it right, didn't I? Yeah.
Well, you were doing some.
I'm sorry.
Flies,
Yeah,
so
that I was doing. So Megadeth is in third, Anthrax is in fourth. All right, I had it right the first time I said it. My apologies. It's like 2:30 in the morning.
Dave.
I'm trying to do math. So Dave, we didn't try and slight you yet again. So. Mark made the joke earlier, I think unironically, about sometimes Megadeth seems like the redheaded stepchild of and I kind of laughed. I'll let that kind of simmer out there. So, but now we're on to influence in terms of the influence it's had on both the metal scene and the music scene.
Yeah, music in general, popular culture.
Pop culture, exactly. And so this gets tough. You know, we argued for quite a while about the bottom two, actually, which was kind of interesting. And I even made a pitch for one of these two bands at the bottom to possibly duke it out for top two. I would never put them in first place, but just in terms of like the impact they've had maybe on music and stuff. But we'll get to that when we get to it. So
a little bit of a stretch, I gotta say.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a stretch. I like to spitball things, you know.
But yeah, in the as far as
so where do you approach this? How do you look at influence? Do you see it as more influence on metal or influence on music, or how do you weigh a category like this?
Well, let's start with Dave for a second.
Okay.
Megadeth is one of those weird bands that I'd never see any overt like reference in another band or like they're pulling in
like copycats.
I never have heard another band that sounds like Megadeth, to be honest.
I mean, Arch Enemy has some things going on that have some Megadeth-y qualities to them. Yeah, isms. I would never say
Friedman-isms or something.
Yeah,
but
sure.
But they're not. I don't know what their influence is, to be honest. It always has shocked me or surprised me. I shouldn't say shocked me, but surprised me how big they've gotten with how like Dave's vocals are not. Like from a mainstream audience, what does that even sound like?
They're pretty unattractive, yeah.
It's just they're weird. Like, I mean, he owns his voice, but how does that, I don't understand how that appeals to a mainstream crowd.
Now, do you think that there are some bands like that we're maybe not into that probably have like a lot of Megadeth influence, like, you know, your Lamb of Gods, your Triviums, like some of those kind of like Avenged Sevenfolds maybe that
maybe
they are drawing on that. I feel like they might, but I don't know enough about any of those bands to
I've heard a little bit of Trivium. I don't really hear that.
They seem more like Metallic-y or something like that, or like Wannabe.
Avenged Sevenfold, super anthemic.
Yeah, which works, but
sure, I've never understood Megadeth's appeal, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's a really weird thing. And like I do
maybe against the guitar teachers, the guitar techs of the world, the people that like
but like vocally
the lead guitar players of the world who aren't writing the songs but are like playing like some of like the consistent
I can see
notes.
the underdog aspect of that he's got to work twice as hard because of, you know, all the other aforementioned Metallica
stuff,
things.
Yeah.
But like vocally like Brian Johnson,
yeah,
weird voice.
Sure.
Udo from Accept, weird voice. Axl Rose has a weird... Like, there's a lot of people with weird voices.
Yeah, but
Axl not quite as much.
Axl kind of has a quality when he sings right.
But Dave doesn't sing.
No, he
kind of croaks and
snarls a little. Like
it's such a weird thing that they are up there probably at number 2 as far as sales go between them and Metallica.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah, for sure. It's weird. No, I agree. That is weird. So ultimately I
don't think they have.
They haven't had that influence. Yeah, for sure. And I would probably have to agree. I think, you know, some people like get like you could do a Dave Mustaine impression in pop culture, and people might know like, "Hello, me." You know, like if you do that, like someone might laugh, like, or from Beavis and Butthead, or from just like growing up with a little bit of MTV. Like they might just kind of know. Or they might know the bass line because it was the bass line to MTV and the news. Yeah. You know, so, I mean, there was like this
inadvertent,
in the midst of like Countdown to Extinction, there was this weird zeitgeist moment for a while where like Dave Mustaine was everywhere on MTV. He was doing
the Get Out the Vote.
He was doing the Rock the Vote thing for Clinton, and he was, ironically, you like that? And then also he did the national anthem before celebrity MTV like softball games, and he would do like Jimi Hendrix style on his Flying V. And I just remember that as a kid. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like he's doing it like thrash metal on his style. Shoulders? Probably something.
Or shoulders on his
wrists. Yeah. So ultimately, you know, Megadeth is going to fall into fourth place in terms of influence here.
As far as where we're both seeing it from.
Sure. But. And I would see, and the reason why, like for me, it's a real easy debate between them and Anthrax is Anthrax has had more of a strange influence like on pop culture. It might be because of 9/11. It might be because
it might be because Scott Ian had an incredible presence on VH1.
Yeah, Scott Ian was on the show where he was in a band with Nugent and Sebastian Bach, and
but he's also on all those like pop-up video things, the 80s show or the I Love the 80s,
I love the 80s, I love the 90s, things like that. He's got an iconic look with the goatee and the bald head. But then I think, you know, when you look at influence not just on pop culture, you look at the influence on metal and music, and I think the thing that puts them over the edge, and whether or not this is a good or a bad thing, they might have unleashed the genie that can never be put back in the bottle. But, you know, we open up with I'm the Man, and I'm the Man was kind of a novelty sort of single that Anthrax did, and it showed that Anthrax had an interest in other genres of music outside of just like say thrash and punk and metal
we're willing
and stuff like
to expose
it. And they would wear them on their sleeves, and I think it's not by accident that they're the East Coast band, because in the early 80s that's when like New York hip hop is like a thing, and New York hip hop was coming out of the same areas that punk was, and a lot of the punk people, I mean that's how Beastie Boys went from hardcore punk to like rap, you know, because like originally a lot of early hip hop was like black punk, you know what I mean? It had that kind of fierceness and stuff like that, you know, and you would hear like Blondie doing stuff with like punk, obviously is where she was coming out of, but then she did like the Rapture, you know, where she's like rap, and so there was like a weird crossover sort of interest, and then so you know you get Public Enemy doing like Bring the Noise, and they name check Anthrax, you know, thrash this for Anthrax, you know, Chuck D's kind of rapping about that, and that was kind of like a cool little moment. And then of course Anthrax, when they would play live, would wear Public Enemy shirts on stage, and it became a thing, and eventually, as most of you know historically, they do Bring the Noise, and you can make the argument that that song single-handedly kind of opened the floodgates for kind of like rap metal, and it paved the way for Rage Against the Machine. It paved the way for other bands that didn't do as many cool things with it. Obviously, the whole new metal scene. You know, I think like you know the Korns, the Deftones, the Linkin
the direct
Parks.
like antecedent is Limp Bizkit.
On some level,
is the most pure incarnation, like white man not knowing any kind of context of what they're talking about, taking that idea and moving it to just some piece of bullshit.
Although I would make the argument that Anthrax probably knew what Chuck D was talking about, because politically they understood.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They were
also, I think Anthrax,
I would see the closest thing that would bring the noises is that first Rage Against the Machine record in '92, like where there's some serious politics, there's some serious metallic kind of like hit you in the face moments.
I was just saying, Limp Bizkit is that's a white guy that has no idea of the context of that.
Or Kid Rock.
What he got of it.
Kid Rock, Limp Bizkit, those are kind of like the worst end of that spectrum.
I can't believe I'm saying this.
Crazy Town Butterfly is the worst it gets. We should do an episode. Just kidding.
No, you need to go listen to the Roach Coach podcast. A friend of mine
that we might maybe do like a team up with down the road.
Yeah,
so
they talk about that with much more patience than I ever could. But Anthrax is one of the few, I mean, out of the big four that had humor injected into their.
Well, they were huge comic book fans, and they like loved Stephen King.
Singing about fucking Judge Dredd. And like Metallica was a little bit more. Like the albums were dead serious.
Yep.
Outside of it, the Alcoholica stuff, like you know, jokey, whatever. Slayer, dead serious, and interviews across the board.
Sure. Megadeth. I don't know how they came off, because I don't really see a lot of interviews from that era. Dave was way into drugs.
Dave was Dave. Nobody else in the band was really on the radar as far as the public eye was concerned. I don't think.
Yeah.
So it's a weird, because I think the humor thing gets you a lot more. People, I don't know. If I see people have a sense of humor about what they're doing, it makes me more endeared to them a little bit, you know.
And I think you can make the argument that even outside of Anthrax, the stuff that Charlie was doing with like SOD was really interesting and important to like metal history too.
Yeah,
and he was bringing his kind of like drumming style, like the whole Charlie Don't Cheat. That Charlie may have been the one that invented kind of the blast beat.
I think him and a couple other guys.
Yeah. So I mean, if again, and this is where like I would make a very passionate
He's the most
argument.
Proficient guy at the blast beat.
Sure. And that's why I think even though Anthrax may have lost the great classic albums category last, I think in terms of like influence, they've done more stranger, unique things that have like had like a lasting weird influence
that didn't seem completely out of character.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in a weird way, like you can listen to Bring the Noise and it's not bad. Like they're
I didn't think it was bad
when it first came out. It's good. It's heavy as shit, you know, and like there was an edge to Public Enemy too.
And at the time, I liked both bands.
Yeah, because Public Enemy was like heavy for rap. I mean, they were they were scary as shit.
They were they were angry. They were talking about real things.
Sure, they used Slayer samples in their songs and things like that. And
it was hard. It was hard in general.
So that's where Anthrax slots in at number 3, and then we have this debate again: Slayer, Metallica. Thing I made the argument passionately is if you're trapped in the metal category, I think based on our podcast, Requiem Metal Podcast, where we tend to look a little bit more into extremity, I think Slayer wins if you're only looking at like metal, because you could say that Slayer draws a direct line out of Slayer to black metal, to grindcore, to death metal, to metalcore, even to like what At the Gates did. This amalgamation, like it's a lot of like sped up, tremolo riffing and things like that. Not that At the Gates wasn't drawing from Metallica, and really they were drawing a lot from like the German thrash stuff too. All those Gothenburg bands were. But, you look at like any metalcore band or like even like Converge, or you look at those and they're like draped and bathing in Slayer riffs. Because there's something kind of
if not the
simple,
riffs, the riff, the picking style.
The picking style, exactly. Yeah. There's something about Slayer that's like just appeals to like the punk kind of people and the metal kind of people.
Well, Henneman was sort of huge. That's all he listened to is fucking punk music.
Yeah, TSOL and some of that kind of stuff.
Kennedy's and all that, you know.
And so again, if you're just looking in that scope, Slayer I think would win this category. But then it becomes the debate on. There are Metallica like copycats obviously within metal, but then you look at like pop culture and you look at like how big is Metallica in like a pop culture sort of way.
Well, also they were the first thrash band to break.
Yeah, they were.
That got everybody on board, all the majors. Like this can make us money.
Yeah.
So for good or bad, they help commoditize the whole thing. So
they've played on every continent in the world now. Because they played the Antarctica show.
They're playing China again next month.
Yep. They've headlined some of the biggest kind of tours like ever. Biggest festivals and things like that. Like I think a song like Enter Sandman there is no song that Slayer will ever make that will transcend and become a classic rock song. And I don't think there's a song that Megadeth wrote that will be a classic rock song, or that Anthrax wrote that will technically be a classic rock song. And to me, Enter Sandman, you could play that next to AC/DC, Back in Black, and Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven, and it makes sense.
Absolutely.
And so, like, for better or for worse, you can hate them for that, because, like, now you're stuck with that song for the rest of eternity in the same way you're stuck with, like, Highway to Hell, which I love that song, or like...
I just don't listen to the radio, so it doesn't affect me.
Yeah, exactly. But the people that do, it's there, so, I don't know.
Well, and that ekes up Megadeth for like they actually do have stuff on the radio.
That's true. Sweating Bullets and
Anthrax. I don't really know if there's much. Maybe something off the new record. I don't listen to the radio enough to.
Yeah,
maybe on
you hear breathing
lightning.
Breathing Lightning on the radio sometimes.
Slayer
like
definitely
that.
No. Maybe In a God DeVita cover if somebody's feeling spunky, but
yeah. It is weird because Slayer's like the least commercial of all these, but yet they've probably had just as certainly as big of an influence as anybody in metal.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting because
they're successfully commercially too.
It is weird. Yeah, they Slayer fans are very passionate.
I think the height of their power was Seasons.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I remember hearing War Ensemble on the fucking classic rock station.
You could, and Z93, which was like our station up near Mount Pleasant that you could hear stuff on. I guess you also have like the debate on which was a bigger record in all time. Some people have said that Raining Blood is the most important record in the history of metal because it influenced every other genre. You could put that next to like Black Sabbath, or, and then some people have said, well, Master of Puppets had that kind of influence too, you know. So like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You know, I mean, if you said to me, Slayer, Rain and Blood is maybe the most important record to happen to extreme metal, I might say yes, because it's like the gateway drug to death metal for a lot of people. Like no one had heard a record that fast or that aggressive. You know, I mean, you hear a song like Piece by Piece or something like that, or Jesus Saves, and you're like, you're basically in death metal. You just don't have the vocals yet. You know, I mean, the drumming is so like crazy. The riffing's just so crazy. But again, we're not talking about death metal. We're talking the whole enchilada, as you will. Not just genre, but even outside of metal. And so, having said that, I think you got to give Metallica the edge here.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think Metallica will, you know, like the cockroaches, will last after the nuclear apocalypse. You know, there'll be some...
Well, and still, like, thinking of their 80s output, like, nobody knew who the fuck they were until, 86? When they opened for Ozzy on that tour?
Sure.
I mean, in a general sense.
Yeah, but then they kind of, like, made themselves famous without MTV.
Yeah, it was...
I mean, one helped a lot.
Pure determination, too. Like,
yeah.
Even seeing, like, the heavy metal parking lot where people are asking, like, who'd you come to see, Ozzy or Metallica? And like,
Metallica.
Ozzy's fucking lame. Metallica's the best.
Yeah, people who got it.
Like,
you know what
that's pretty fucking huge.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen much anymore. Where the opening act in that level of a national stage is that, you know, is that vocally like, holy shit, this is the next big thing.
Yeah, it paved the way for themselves, you know, and so you got to give them that. So,
and they didn't compromise what they wanted to do.
Nope.
Some people would say the Black Album a little bit, but that's what they wanted to do.
And they wanted to do Load and Reload against maybe their better wishes. And like,
well, they toured for fucking 5 years on that goddamn record.
Live Binge and Purge. Yeah,
it's like,
Shit Binge
Jesus.
and Purge. Yeah.
That's, I mean, that can make you insane. Going from a big national act to a fucking huge worldwide act.
Yeah.
Like, that can really change you. Especially, like, you're 30 years old, 27
years old. Well, I remember
how
much that, like, the live stuff really dominated MTV, too. Like, on Headbangers Ball, there were, like, live videos for, like, 5 different songs. You know, Whiplash, Search and Destroy, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Like, a lot of songs from, like, the early output of their...
That they never had videos for.
But, like, got, like, a second life through that, you know. And so, you know, again, Slayer just will never get to that kind of category. They might have like
They're
a longevity.
Sports Center though, right?
Yeah, for sure.
They play live on Sports Center.
They do have like kind of a weird, you know, and they've almost replaced, you know, play Freebird with play some Slayer. Like that's like a thing you yell from like a crowd now, Slayer instead of like Skidder. So it's almost become like I can say Slayer to my students, and my students are kind of like, oh, we kind of know who Slayer is, you know.
They're like the next level of Alice Cooper.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. They're shocking.
Cooper's never been. I mean, he's big, but he's never been as huge as like Zeppelin.
No, for sure.
So I mean, but he's always been consistent. Slayer consistent, you know.
And I mean, Slayer. We were talking about this with Anthrax. I mean, Slayer snuck on to No Sleep Till Brooklyn from Beastie Boys, and like I said, Public Enemy sampled some of their riffs and. There's one kind of crazy, weird, this is going to be way out of your wheelhouse, but there was a band called Atari Teenage Riot that did a lot of stuff with Slayer riffs and things like that. And there was a great song they had called Destroy 2,000 Years of Culture that was like, did Skin Mask kind of as like the main riff. And, you know, so like it's, Slayer's always, no metal fan hates Slayer. You might be disappointed with newer Slayer, but but you will find metal fans who hate Metallica because they're pissed. They're like, they're so betrayed by like things Metallica's done. They're like, I'm done with Metallica. And no one ever feels that way about Slayer, even if you don't like some of their newer stuff as much. You never feel like Slayer's turned their back on metal.
Yeah.
Whereas like
that's all they are. Yeah.
You could make an argument that Metallica at a certain point was kind of like, we're over.
But that's fine. They did. I mean, an adult.
Doesn't bother me. I'm okay with it. I can live
totally
with it.
Fine with people doing something different. It's never going to take away these first couple. Yeah. Just like with a good director, if you did a couple great, like early De Palma stuff is super interesting, and his later stuff I find boring as shit.
Yeah, even like early Coppola.
Yeah,
is great.
The early stuff is not gonna negate everything else.
Yep. So with that said, Metallica wins the day. Metallica wins the category. So congratulations to Metallica. You have the most influence of the big four on metal and on the music world. And so in honor of that, Mark decided to pick out a song that we were joking about earlier that I...
bow to your knees to the Phantom Lord.
Yes, I was saying, I know Kill 'Em All pretty well, but there's like 2 songs on here that I hardly ever listen to. And I mentioned like Phantom Lord and...
It's reminiscent to Seek and Destroy. It's kind of...
Well, is this not one of the songs that Mustaine co-wrote, right? That's how we arrived on talking about Phantom Lord. I think this is one of them. Yeah. I think he co-wrote like... Four Horsemen. Mm-hmm. Oh man, I just lost it. Motor Breath, maybe, and Jump in the Fire, perhaps. I don't know.
I don't remember.
I'm just making this up. I just looked at it. I just looked at it, but I think Phantom Lord is one of the others, and I was like, oh, I don't know that one as well. So enjoy Phantom Lord from Metallica from Kill 'Em All in honor of me. That was Phantom Lord from Metallica's Kill 'Em All from 1983. And Mark, we are on to our final category. And what we have right now in the Big Four is we got a two-way tie at the top between Metallica and Slayer.
We've got the Phantom Lord versus the Slayer.
Yeah.
The Metal Storm.
The Metal Storm versus the Phantom Lord. And so it's a dogfight going in this last category to see if one of these two will eke out a victory. And then we
versus,
actually have...
NFL versus Eye of the Tornado.
Yes. I thought you were going for a sports metaphor when you said NFL. I was like, wait,
nice fucking life, man.
Where's NFL going? I was gonna say the USFL, which is a really obscure, or like the XFL, which was
Vince McMahon.
Yeah, they're doing a 30 for 30 documentary on XFL, which I'm pretty excited about.
When's the Ric Flair one coming out?
I think around the time of WrestleMania. They're gonna try and time it around, which is like late March, early April.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I know. But that means it'll be just extra perfect.
All right.
Ric Flair was just on Raw the other night. Finally came back after many months. Yeah, he's against his daughter.
Every morning on Facebook when I wake up, I get there's something of 3 or 4 different things of him and George Takei talking.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Makes it all worthwhile.
That's good. And then we've got a fight for who is going to be in the doghouse. Right now, Anthrax and Megadeth are tied in with 8 points going in this final category. This final category is way more of a subjective one. This is one. I'm gonna turn this over to the artist here for a moment to talk about imagery and iconography and things like that, and kind of how we debated this.
Oh, we've got cover art, which is a pretty big deal, or can be. That was like, at least pre-internet, that was my inroad to metal music. I'd go to the record store, whatever record cover really jumped out at me.
That's how we did it.
Death Leprosy, yes please.
Yep.
There's a couple real turds in there, but also take into account stage imagery, like what's their personal kind of like nobody dresses up really.
Yep.
I mean, I guess Slayer wins for spikes.
Yeah. So Slayer had definitely the image with the upside down cross kind of things that they would do. Like if you look at the back of like Live Undead and Show No Mercy and Hell Awaits, like the way that they dressed in the early years, the Metal Blade years. They definitely had like kind of
a little more leather and spikes. But Kerry King's though, like especially even into the 80s, like Rain and Blood era had that huge gauntlet thing of nails.
Yeah.
I don't know how the fuck he ever played anything. But everybody, like Metallica, Megadeth are pretty much jeans and t-shirt guys. Dave always wore the button-up white shirt.
Yes, he did.
And jeans. And Anthrax was more kind of just like
they had like kind of a street, kind of hardcore kind of style, which I kind of always
Scott Ian
cool.
always wore shorts.
Yep, wore shorts.
Deck short or
like
board shorts.
They kind of had like a skater look to them, almost like skater thrash.
And then
like, almost like Suicidal Tendencies.
Charlie cut his hair, had the rat tail for a while, and now he's just had that same look.
Scotty went bald before. They were like they were kind of ahead of the curve, almost like the first of those thrash bands to start like going short hair, and then you got Kerry King.
Necessity. Some of them out of necessity.
Then you got Kerry King, and then of course Metallica did the whole load haircut, like fashion model kind of mode or something.
Which I don't really discredit or begrudge Metallica for cutting their hair, because I went through that phase of being a metalhead forever. And
look at me, I don't dress the part, but there's probably people that see me at shows and probably think, who's this like accountant that's just like hanging
but you're
out.
Not on a national stage looking one way.
That's true.
You come out a year later.
But I kind of wear there's a badge of honor that like I could in like a battle like really like just like run circles around them in terms of like metal cred. You know what I mean? Like it almost like makes me kind of like happy that I'm like taken for granted.
You don't need it.
No. Yeah, exactly. I don't need to dress the part or whatever. So we talked about that. Then there's the whole idea too, like when you talk about mascots, and you got Vic Rattlehead from Megadeth. You could really maybe like eke out a mascot from the others.
There's that Anthrax guy that Sergio Aragones drew, the guy with the mustache.
Yeah,
I don't know what his name is.
I don't know either.
I didn't look it up.
You've got the Wershmott like skull from Slayer that wasn't really on their album covers, but was kind of part of like their t-shirt merchandising.
The Show No Mercy weird
I wish he had exactly become like their mascot. if that guy, the goat dude, if he was
in the center of the labyrinth guy, whatever, the Minotaur versus meets the Baphomet guy.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been really, really cool, but they didn't kind of pursue that. So there's a lot of different things kind of going in to all this, and but I think obviously to me, what I think was the strongest pull of this was the album covers.
Yeah,
that was like first and foremost.
Because really the bands weren't they're the delivery mechanism, but they're not Kiss or Alice Cooper or Ghost or somebody that's a theatrical band like that in that capacity.
Yep. I mean, even like Motley Crue with like explosions and different stuff that they would do.
Shout Out the Devil era was pretty interesting. But
they light themselves on fire and stuff. I mean, that was pretty Alice Cooper-y, if you will.
Yeah.
So for me, I think when you look at who's going to finish in fourth place here, I think in terms of album covers, it was real easy that we went with Anthrax. Anthrax, unfortunately, has the least interesting album covers of any of the bands. Spreading the Disease and State of Euphoria have kind of like a common like imagery sort of going with like madness of some sort.
Yeah.
And
I think the artist that did those looks like he's the 2000 AD, the British comic. Okay. It might be that. It might be one of those.
Some of the Judge Dredd.
Yeah, so that might be something like Simon Bisley did some shit with.
Yeah, I know Bisley. It was more like merch
before
Lobo. Yeah. So.
But I like the Among the Living cover purely because it looks like the weird guy that was dying of pancreatic cancer in Poltergeist 2.
Okay.
That comes around to see Carol Ann before things happen.
I told Mark I think that
and the Tall Man. But.
He kind of looks like Phantasm the Tall Man. Angus
Scrim.
Yeah. That I think it's I almost said Stand By Me, which is technically Stephen King.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah, but it's the character, I think Randall Flagg or something from The Stand. He's like the Satan kind of figure. I think that's who that is.
Oh, in the miniseries, the guy with the mullet?
Yes, okay. That guy. I think that's who it's supposed to be, but don't quote me on that. I just remember reading that like in the Decibel interview years ago when they were talking about the cover imagery and what influenced their songs. And pretty sure Among the Living's about The Stand.
They were the most blatant pop culture,
for sure. They were like
devotees.
They kind of were like they're like us. If we like, we would probably include all these weird things in there. We also brought into like logos and stuff like that, and Anthrax's logo is pretty like okay, but it's
their
like
logo
standard.
Influenced Carcass's logo.
Did it really?
According to Jeff Walker.
Huh. That's cool. Did not know that.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, maybe makes. Well, there's it just in terms of album covers. Anthrax is in fourth place, so that leads us to third place now. And so, why Megadeth? I mean, they got Vic. They got a
Peace Sells
cool
is a great cover.
Peace Sells, great cover. Rust in Peace.
Rust in Peace is a good cover.
It's like X-File-ish, which I kind of like.
It's fine.
Being an X-Files guy. Yeah. Countdown to Extinction's not a bad cover. It's kind of like that, like skeletal, like.
It looks like the guy from The Unforgiven, though.
Yeah, but I don't think they knew that, right?
I don't know. That's what every time I saw, I was like,
Dave, did you steal that from the Unforgiven video? Man. Come on, Dave.
I saw that guy in a movie recently too.
Do you really?
That old man that's digging up the wall or whatever. If that's Unforgiven or if it
is
Unforgiven.
Okay. Yeah, that's Unforgiven. Yep. I was getting that confused with Nothing Else Matters video.
But they have had some decent covers, I think,
sure. Over
even the Dystopia cover
is a great cover.
It's like CG-ish, but it's interesting. It's more of a modern take on
and it's
Vic.
Actually maybe the best cover too of the big four recent output. The Slayer cover is pretty good, but it's
Repentless one's good. Metallica cover is fucking shit.
Terrible.
I hate it.
The Anthrax one's like classy but simple.
It's Alex Ross, comic artist.
Yep.
He's done their last three, I think.
Okay, yeah, I like it. It's kind of like a
I like the pomposity of having these big statues, like religious icons of bands.
Yeah.
So I like a little bit of that on the nose shit, but
for sure. But ultimately, Megadeth just doesn't have the sort of iconic covers like outside of maybe Peace Sells. Peace Sells is pretty iconic. Like you could show that to most people. The color scheme of it is really unique.
But Vic is the mascot. I've never read anything about where the fuck he came from. If that was something the art director or just Dave came up with, or what
kind of was invented or something.
Yeah, But that eked him over the Anthrax.
Yep. So that means Megadeth is going to end up in third place, and Anthrax, sorry, of the big four, you're going to finish with 9 points and be in fourth place. Megadeth squeaks in at third place with 10. So congratulations to those two. Now we've got a dogfight between the top two. Who's going to be, according to our really arbitrary categories, the most impactful of the big four? And so
we've got Kill 'Em All.
Yep.
Pretty interesting cover. Not my favorite, but it's. I
told Mark it might have given them an edge in my mind if they were able to get the metal up your ass.
The toilet with the metal fist up the butt.
Yep. So,
and then
I think Ride the Lightning's pretty iconic, just with the lightning bolts and the color scheme, the blue.
I just remember when I saw the Injustice and the Master Puppets cover at the store.
Those made you want to buy them.
Yeah. Those made me want to buy them
for sure.
And that was just like looking at a fucking Iron Maiden cover, but like cooler.
Sure.
Like more edge or something.
Yeah. I mean, Master Puppets, you gotta like kind of stare at like the crosses, like what's kind of in, at the time I thought it was more of like a religious overtones. I didn't know it was like drug abuse and, death from drugs and all that sort of stuff.
Well, and I didn't know the context of the whole like Arlington Cemetery thing that's in it. And like, I was a fucking teenager. I didn't know all this shit.
But I think the Justice Lady like speaks like, pretty huge in terms of like their stage show too, that they had like the Justice Lady on the side of the stage and things like that.
And it hit me as like, it was almost as like powerful as me like seeing Planet of the Apes for the first time and not knowing the ending.
Gotcha.
And you see,
for sure.
I'm not going to say spoilers on a movie from fucking 1968 or whatever, but seeing like that, like taking a symbol.
You're talking about the Lincoln Memorial at the end of the Tim Burton one, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. But spoiled.
Taking the Statue of Liberty that's supposed to show the inclusiveness and freedom that's offered in the States, and that it's a shriveled husk at the end of the end of the world, but showing like the dichotomy of the justice system. Like it's a very on the nose thing, but to a teenager, it just hit everything. It's perfect.
Pretty mind blowing. Yeah. The problem you have is, you have the Black Album, which is like unique in its Spinal Tap-ish Beatles White Album kind of like way or whatever, and then after that, that's it.
That's it.
I mean, you got the like whole like notoriety of like the blood and cum like load reload kind of stuff.
And that was some like famous photographer. Sure. I didn't give a shit.
Whatever. Yeah.
And fucking Metallica. I want a guy
Saint Anger covers. Whew, bad. I mean,
at least it was Pusshead.
Yeah, that's true. But
that's the only
the color
plus side.
Was so weird. Just everything garish. Was weird about it. But
Death Magnetic was like, it's fine.
It was fine. Yeah, and then Hardwired is not good.
I hate it.
It's terrible. Yep. So
I think if they would have had a painted cover by whatever dude did that shit, because I think the same guy that did Master did Injustice, if I'm not mistaken,
and I think Ride.
Possibly.
I want to say there's something like really consistent.
But Injustice had such good Pusshead merch.
Yeah.
Through that era, I was just like, I couldn't. My dad wouldn't take me to see a fucking Metallica concert, so I just.
They're the only big force I haven't seen.
Me too.
I'm actually willing to go now because I just feel like with Bowie and other people, I just need to see bands before they're done.
I had a free ticket to Orion Fest that was at Belle Isle 4 years ago or whatever. I left. My now wife, her mom was getting married that day, and I was like, okay, I got to go and do some business, and then I'll come meet you. 10 minutes after I left, they did a Kill 'Em All set unannounced. I was standing 10 feet from where they were playing. It's like, God damn it.
God, that
would have been great to see.
For sure. Yeah, I've never seen them. Now I want to, just because, like, again, we're reinvigorated a little bit with this new album. It's like, okay, if I'm going to see them, like, let's do it before, like, maybe
I think they're going to play Ford Field or something, so.
Which is fine. I saw Guns there, and it was good.
Where were you sitting and how much you paid for tickets?
I think we paid like $75. Which is fine. We have good seats.
I paid $100 for Sabbath, so
yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Like we're getting old. We got to see these bands before they get old. So then you got that, and then you go to like the stuff. We already talked about the guy on the cover of Show No Mercy, which kind of has a juvenile but like yet kind of cool. Like
I love it though.
I love it too. It's great. Hell Awaits is incredible. It's like something like out of like a horror comic.
When I first saw it as a kid, I was almost scared to look at it.
I mean, it's like just demons like ripping apart like people as they're descending to hell and stuff.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
There's just a lot to kind of take in.
And then you get to the Larry Carroll stuff, which is the Rain and Blood. Did he do South too?
And Seasons.
Yep. And then he later came back and did Christ Illusion. You know, and so you've got that. Divine Intervention, not great.
Wes Ben Scotter cover.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird, like, you're entering like the Photoshop digital era.
It's actually all airbrush painted.
Is it?
Yeah.
And it's cool.
But it's so... Because Slayer had the most, I would say, kind of art house, like, stuff. Like, it wasn't like exactly what you thought you should have seen.
No, it's very
especially after Halloween
and things like that. Yeah.
But the Larry Carroll shit was just fucking weird.
Yeah, you could stare at it and see all like the weird stuff, like on the Rain cover, just staring at all the people in hell.
There were goats and shit all over the place and stuff, and
you know, and I think like too, they did something really. They didn't have a mascot, but in some ways. Couldn't you make the argument that the mascot of Slayer is that sort of pentagram with the swords? I mean, really, that is almost like it's an icon. It's a symbol of Slayer that like you can see it like anywhere. Whereas like I don't know if any of those other bands really had a symbol. Like there's no defining like non-verbal symbol that like when you saw it you're like, oh, that's Metallica. Oh, that's
Metallica did this later on. They did the stupid just the M symbol, which I don't really like.
But to me, I think without even letters, like you saw that and it was like, oh, that's Slayer. Like I can see that pentagram.
Later on, Anthrax would go on to do the Anthrax pentagram.
Yeah, that's true. They have their kind of little
but that wasn't until like
the last couple records. You know? So ultimately, what kind of did it for us is we looked at like what covers do we enjoy the most, what imagery have we gotten like the most sort of joy out of, and as sort of like iconic as the Metallica records are, and just looking at you can show anybody like Injustice for All and they know what it is, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets. I gain a lot more enjoyment out of the Slayer records, and you as an artist, like how do you kind of come down on this?
Well, they're the ones that keep giving. They're the movie that you watch and you don't really, at first you're like, okay, there's something there, but I don't really get it. It's not just spelling everything out.
Sure.
Like repeated viewings, you get more out of it.
Mm-hmm. And even some of like the lesser Slayer covers, like Diablos and Musica, still is kind of like has an interesting concept to it.
Yeah.
The sort of like ghostly kind of ghoul kind of looking sort of figure. It almost reminds me of some like half-baked ideas that you ended up doing full versions of, like with like Eclipse covers, like just weird esoteric kind of like muted things, you know what I mean? Like where you're just like kind of trying to obscure an image a little bit, or like kind of
just taking photography and kind of
more opaque or something. You're just doing weird things, and like I don't know. I think 98 is so the very beginning of like bad digital everything, and so you got a lot of bad digital kind of stuff.
Yeah, that record was super similar to that Smashing Pumpkins Adore. It was like just stark black and white.
Sure.
Like, I think that was about the same time.
No, yeah, that was 97. I think was Adore. You know, and like God Hates Them All with like the Bible, like you know, with like a nail through it. I mean, it
looked like Covenant kind of. To me,
it's got like a kind of that sort of thing happening for it. So. So I think just in terms of consistent output and, like you said, the gift that keeps on giving, looking at these.
Especially the Larry Carroll stuff, I would say.
For sure. That Slayer wins out with Images, and that is going to put Slayer just ahead in terms of...
By 1 point.
Just by 1 point. It's going to give them 16 points to Metallica's 15. And so, you know, there's probably people out there that are losing their minds who are hardcore Metallica fans and are angry with us.
They're probably not listening to this show.
Oh, yeah, they're probably not listening to this show. Or people that felt like Megadeth got slighted or Anthrax got slighted. Or maybe you totally agree with us. But, you know, it's been a fun little rabbit hole journey down kind of how to look at the big four, because, you know,
And I'm not so married to any of these that I'm like going to fight. I think that
we negotiate it, debate it, and different things like that. You know, it's kind of like there's some podcasts I listen to where they rank like episodes. There's a Seinfeld podcast I listen to where like they rank episodes after each one in regard to all the others, and a Buffy podcast I listen to where they put it and slot it and things like that. And there's always negotiations between the two people, and they're like, well, if you give me this, then it's got to be better than this, and then they kind of it just settles and
then it comes to like Buffy, it's fucking 10 years after the thing came out, so you're gonna have different.
You're having it's different than like that emotional moment you just first watched it or something. So
because all these bands, I mean, I still love, you know, Slayer's still something I listen to on a weekly basis.
Yeah,
Metallica is something that's in my DNA at this point.
You know those albums, and same for me with some of the Megadeth and Anthrax has always for me been kind of second tier, I guess a little bit. I always knew. I think even before we did this, I knew that Slayer and Metallica would be probably fighting for first and second in my heart.
Yeah,
you know, regardless of what the categories were.
Least, in my personal taste, that's kind of where I was always at. And Metallica, I give more credit just because they're one of the bigger, and they're one of the bigger bands that like affected me for hit me at a really good key time in my life, like John Carpenter did. So it's even if they do kind of shit, it's still more enjoyable than stuff I don't really like that much.
I agree. So let us know what you thought. Send us an email at requiempodcast @gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter at Podcast Requiem. You can find us on iTunes. Leave us a star rating. Or
thank you so much for all of the we've got some of the best reviews ever out there.
Amazing stuff. So it's really good. So if you like what we're doing, very much give us some feedback. And like I said, pretty soon we're going to be getting something going, hopefully with some kind of either a Patreon page or something where people who want to donate to the show or kind of have a more direct feedback and give us some criticisms and things like that, or some advice or show ideas or things. So we really do want to kind of, get that going. So keep those in your back pocket and more info to come. We have some ideas that I think might prove to be kind of fruitful and stuff. You can also find us on Facebook, Mark Jason on Facebook. Used
to be Mark and Jason,
I had to get rid of it. So it's now Mark Jason. That's good stuff. So we are going to end with the winner who has come out on top. Metal Storm has defeated Phantom Lord, and now
he must face the Slayer.
And so enjoy Metal Storm Face the Slayer from Show No Mercy. I am Jason.
And I am Mark. Fuck the sword, love the pen.
Love the pen.
That's how I get money.
There you go.